super excited to have ObjectivelyDan with us this evening. And ObjectivelyDan is a content creator, most known as the creator and primary host of Truth Wanted, a weekly call-in show that talks about what people believe and why. He's an advocate for street epistemology, a methodology for talking to people about their beliefs in an exploratory and constructive manner. And Dan was once a Christian when he was first exposed to street epistemology and is now an outspoken igtheist who dedicates himself to secular and progressive activism. And I am so excited to have you on the show tonight. Dan, welcome. Tell us about yourself. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing snaps.
Yes.
Thank you. No, I think hopefully the bio I wrote tells enough about me without having me to add on to it. If I have to add on to it, I guess it's not a good enough bio, but no, yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm like I said, most known for hosting Truth Wanted, which is a show associated with the atheist community of Austin. If you're familiar with that, I'm also a host on Talk Heathen as well. And maybe a little bit of nepotism at play and a little bit of bias at play, because Kara has been on Truth Wanted, and Helen also volunteers sometimes. So there's some unseen forces at work today that
I volunteer every week, Dan.
Yeah.
But they're not supernatural forces just because they're unseen.
Well, do we know that for sure?
I don't know. Do we have evidence of that?
I don't know. Let's talk about it. No,
I
not
don't
really.
know. What do you think?
Right. Dan, we're not on your damn show right now, okay?
Wrong show.
Yeah,
Hold on. But I highly recommend it. It's a good show. So we were super excited to have you on here because we'd been talking about this. We said we need to have Dan on the show, and here you are.
Yeah,
Almost
and I'm
as
excited.
if we manifested you.
You did manifest me into this reality, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So I was prompted to talk about whatever I wanted, which is a dangerous thing. And I chose the topic to talk about was healthy activism. And I, with an asterisk to that as well, because I also want to talk about effective activism. And I also think that those two are the same things, if we really think about it. So we'll get to that, but I guess is this the part where I can just speak extemporaneously, or do you want to ask me questions, or like what, where you guys are the hosts here? I'm used to hosting so much, so you guys got to take it from me.
You just talk, and then if we have questions, we will build those in.
We'll jump in. We won't leave you hanging, but we are here to hear from you. So give us what you have for us, and we'll jump in.
I want to see your big brain, Dan.
Here's my big brain. So yeah, this was, again, you guys contacted me last week, so I didn't have time to put together any PowerPoints or presentations or anything, but I do have a couple of bullet points that I'm just going to work through with you. And one is the reason why I chose this topic, because I've been very stressed out sometimes doing this whole activism thing. I've been on the internet for about 5 years now, been doing Truth Wanted for about 4 years. And Truth Wanted's kind of my baby. Obviously, it's the one I'm most associated with, but I go on other people's shows. I go on this show like here. I go to conferences sometimes. I try to make it a big part of my life. And I do have a full-time job outside of this. So it really does take up a lot of my free time doing this stuff. And sometimes that can be a little hard, because you see what maybe other people are doing in this space, and that can drive you crazy. Or maybe you see that things just kind of get worse and worse, and you kind of, get into this sort of like, oh, what's even the point of doing this stuff? So there's a term that I've come across recently, which was asked about in the poll, which is compassion fatigue, which is something I hadn't heard of before, but I think, describes my situation pretty well. And what compassion fatigue is essentially this idea that if you're familiar with burnout with work, right? You do work for a long time, and then you get burned out. It's very similar. There's kind of these physical, emotional, and psychological impact to helping other people that can get to you and can sometimes manifest in unhealthy ways. And how that can manifest is that it can give you a sense of fatigue. Obviously, it can give you dissatisfaction with what you're doing. And sometimes even trauma, which I thought was interesting when I looked into this. Now, I think there are some of us who are just naturally inclined to do kind of the activism that we do, right? We're just like really into this kind of stuff. We really want to do it. And so that's a great thing, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to regulate ourselves in some ways, right? There may be people who are like really into going to the gym and who like love working out every day, but that doesn't mean that like you don't follow what's safe when working out, right? Like you don't like just try to go weight that you can't do, or you're going to tear muscles in ways that you don't want to tear, right? So I think there's something similar in figuring out how to do activism right, how to do it in a healthy way. And I learned this personally because when I was first really getting into this, I felt it the hardest because I was also in a process of deconstruction still at the same time. I don't think I still fully had my identity laid out, ready to go. And I think I was like kind of exploring that through activism, if that makes sense. I was kind of like working on myself by talking out to others. We talk about sometimes the angry atheist phase, right? I think my activism came in a part of that. I think it was an extension of, wow, I'm seeing other people doing stuff in this space. I want to do it too. And I'm just going to go whole hog at it. And, that really burned me out to it. It really made me think, wow, I can't do this. So I thought, talking about the conversation today about what healthy activism is and what effective activism is also, because again, I do think those two are the same. I thought I'd bring that to the table. So I can talk more about some of that, but any questions about that so far? What I'm bringing here, compassion fatigue is the vocabulary term of the day.
I think we talked about this on previous episodes.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it, kind of mentioned it, and I don't know if we've ever actually sat down and had a discussion about it, which I loved. When you told me that was what you wanted to talk about this week, I was like, oh my goodness, yes. Because this is something that, kind of like you said, I could really identify with too. You get really excited about something and you really care a lot about it. And sometimes it seems like the more you dig into something and the more work you're trying to do and the more you're trying to help, the more sometimes you realize how big the problem is and how many people are affected by it. And that can be really discouraging at times if you feel like, how am I ever going to make an impact? And, there's so much to be done. And if you're, someone like me of a certain personality where it's going to bug you if it's not finished.
Right. Or if it's not done the way you want it to be done.
Yes.
Right. That's how I feel a lot of times.
Yeah.
And in fact, that notion is really also what inspired me in some ways to start Truth Wanted, because at the time, Atheist Community of Austin only had 2 shows. Well, one, when I first started volunteering there, while I was volunteering there, Talk Heathen developed as a show. But before that, it was just Atheist Experience, right? So I probably don't need to introduce Atheist Experience. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but for those of you who don't know, it's a call-in show that has literally been around. It's literally as old as I am. It's like 27 years old now, and has been around forever and has gotten popular online kind of by accident. Honestly, I don't think they intended it to be that thing, but because it was this public access media that they had recordings of and they were able to put a lot of it out there, it kind of spread. There really wasn't anything like it at the time. And so it's almost like atheist legacy media at this point now, which is hilarious because, it's just so much older compared to most atheist content that's out there. But, I saw what Atheist Experience was doing. And I saw some calls in particular, and this is me in Austin, right? Call screening and doing stuff at the studio. And I was like, I can't show this conversation that's happening right now. I can't show this to my grandma because there's swear words. They're talking about all kinds of stuff. It's not going to meet that audience. And that's not to say what it's doing isn't useful, right? I mean, the ACA gets emails every week about how much Atheist Experience has changed their life, as mentioned to a lot of people. But it's not going to meet everybody's needs, right? So there may have been a need to diversify. So I wanted to do a show that was a little bit more calm, a little bit more tame. And on top of that, talk about some of those more out there topics that don't always get addressed on Atheist Experience. A lot of Atheist Experience is like Christianity, right? But I was interested in QAnon. I was interested in flat earthers. I was interested in all this other kind of out there stuff that, in my opinion, needed just as much addressing as this other stuff. So long story short, that's part of why I started Truth Wanted. And like, I think in doing that, in saying, wow, I have to do it my way, I have to do it the best way possible, because I want my vision of this to come true, I really burned myself out. Because when you're trying to make an entirely new enterprise, trying to start from scratch, that's a really hard thing to do. And right now we have a great number of volunteers that help with all the shows. Helen can tell you how many people work on these shows. When I started with Truth Wanted, it was me, Vern Grainer, and our executive producer at the time, and that was it. And that was it for like 2 years or so. So if I couldn't do a show that week, there was no show. There were no other hosts. It was just me. It was really trying to get this thing off the ground. Now we have like 3 other hosts that we rotate from, and it's really great. So it's like, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's been taken off of my plate, because like the groundwork was kind of laid there, but that was like a really hard thing for me to do. And so like, I guess like that also inspired me to kind of want to talk about this today. Cause it's like, I have some words for past me of how I would do things differently. And for anybody who's considering doing this whole activism thing, whether it's through media or whether it's through volunteering through other means, I have thoughts, I have notes. So, you know, that's kind of my story with the compassion fatigue, how I just kind of wanted to run in guns blazing and ended up getting hurt and almost wanting to not do it after a long time. So yeah,
and you know, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think that's something that happens a lot. It's something we've been talking about recently. Helen and I were talking about that before the show, about that happening to content creators and volunteers and all of us. And, you know, people sometimes just think, oh, you know, where'd that person go? Or, you know, but it's a real thing. And it's something that we should talk about, because I think, I don't know if it's this way with you too, but I know with me, I have a tendency to think, well, if I'm doing something that's helping other people, my focus is completely on that. And I will forget to think about myself, and that whole concept of, you know, needing to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help somebody else. Exactly. I'm like, no, I can hold my breath for a long time. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. But
exactly.
That's not really true, right?
Right. 100%. And especially where I was at when I first was really getting into it, I was still in college. So I had classes and stuff to do. And keep in mind, I've never gotten paid for any work that I do with the atheist community of Boston. Nobody that ever appears on any shows do, in case you're wondering. I know people ask that sometimes. No, it's not a paid gig. Everybody that does stuff on the show is pretty much volunteers. There's a handful of employees that work very hard behind the scenes. But other than that, if you're seeing somebody on camera, they're volunteers. So, you know, with that, I'm trying to balance work life, because I was working at night at a warehouse, going to school during the day, and then on the weekends trying to work on this crazy show. And it was really bad for my health. I wasn't able to spend, you know, it's a Friday night show. I wasn't able to hang out with my friends on Fridays when I wanted to, you know, I was trying to make this time slot work. And you know, it was really bad. So key points, key takeaways. What did I learn? What do I want to tell people? Number one, you're not going to change the world by yourself. You're just not. Okay. So if you have illusions of grandeur and think, wow, your idea is so cool and so amazing that nobody else is doing this, you must be the one. I got some news for you, because even the people that you think are the greatest figures, who are these great figureheads, this sort of great man idea of history that have changed things, it's almost never the case that that's the truth. The truth is, for every single compassionate, wonderful activist or person that you think of that does what you like, chances are they got a lot of help getting there. You probably just haven't heard those people's stories. That's the same thing with Truth Wanted. I mentioned Vern Grainer and other folks who have helped made that show happen. It's not the Objectively Dan show. It is Truth Wanted. It is a group collaboration, and I like it to stay that way, because I realize I can't do this whole thing by myself. And so for some of you folks, especially who are interested in starting particularly media enterprises, but really any kind of enterprise, I suggest strongly, see what you can do with working with other already established institutions and what they're already working on. Because sometimes they just need a change in leadership within to get stuff done. I'm sure Kara can tell you this with recovering from religion, right? You know, there's always volunteer positions for established stuff, especially in the niche field that we work in, right? That not only you can make a difference in, but also learn a lot from. And so for me, that did come in the form of, I mentioned before, I was a call screener with the ACA. You know, I still will do it occasionally. I don't do it as much anymore, obviously, because I'm like hosting most of the time, but it's like, I'm glad I got to kind of learn some of the ins and outs on that in learning that. So that's number one. It's, you're not going to change the world. Figure out what other people are doing and see if maybe you can tag onto that wagon, because like, you know, that's going to be better for you in the long term. It really is, especially if you're doing like what we do. It's just not a career, right? It's something that you do in your spare time. So that's point number one. Before I go on, questions, comments, concerns, because I know I have a tendency to talk a lot, so you know,
that's why we asked you on.
Yeah But like, I like what, so I found, like, because when I started doing my activism, I like got a book. You get a book, you're like, I want to do all the things. And our friend Jason, we were in a chat the other night, and I was like, well, Megan, and they were like, Helen, make sure you're not taking on more than what you can handle. And I took a step back. And also, too, my partner is not an activist, which kind of keeps me grounded, because he'll be like, can we just like have a night where you're not online and we're just watching a movie? Can we just you can't see the world all the time, Helen, like take a step back. And I think it doesn't have to be a partner. It can just be like a friend or a family member that kind of keeps you, like, you can't do this all the time, because you are going to get compassion fatigue. You are going to get tired, because there have been times where I've had conversations with people where afterwards I was emotionally wrecked. Because it's a lot. It is a lot. And I don't think when you're in front of the camera, you're obviously composed and you know, you're presenting yourself in a certain way. But sometimes when I'm alone and I think about the conversations that I've had and the activism that I do, that it can be a lot. It can. And I don't think there's an appreciation for the people like in front of the camera, where we're talking about the work that we do, that there is not enough about how this impacts us, because we're not presenting that to the camera.
For those of us that do this a lot, like you get, I mean, it is a skill. And some people don't realize how much of a skill it is. And that's not to brag on me or on you, right? It's more on this, like, look, there's a lot of emotional labor and a lot of other kinds of labor that you're doing to have a good camera presence and to be able to speak eloquently and also knowledgeably about any subject matter. I see a lot of people. So like, you know, a few months ago, we actually did at the Atheist Community Austin, we had and actually this, I'll go ahead and, if I can, pull this into my bullet point number 2, because it actually works in very beautifully. Okay, so here's bullet point number 2. Bullet point number 2 is you can work behind the scenes and be just as effective as a person in front of a microphone and in front of a camera. Okay, so do not think that there is a hierarchy in the way in which you must volunteer. And so so I'm tying this in, right? So here's the story. Story is, a few months ago, we had some auditions for the Atheist Community of Austin, pretty much for the first time ever. The reason why we've never had auditions is because we've always had people in Austin able to do shows, able to help out behind the scenes. But there was this thing, I don't know if you guys heard of it. It's called COVID-19. And it was kind of a big deal, you know, a few years ago. Actually, still a big deal, but you know, it kind of happened, and it meant that we had to close the studio down for like 2 years before we opened it up again. So in that time frame, we ended up having a lot of volunteers that come online. And you know, with volunteer organizations, volunteers come and go, right? They prioritize it for a while, and sometimes they move on to other things, and that's fine. And that's kind of what happened. And pretty soon we found out, oh, we don't have as many people in Austin anymore to do shows. So anyway, we do these auditions, and these auditions are for 2 things. They're for folks who are in front of the camera and folks who can do stuff behind the scenes, right? So doing some of the editing work, doing some of that call screening work, doing all of that. We had 16 people audition, which was fantastic. Great turnout. All 16 of them wanted to be in front of the camera. And some of them were like, oh yeah, maybe I can do some stuff behind the scenes too, right? Now, I'm not going to be the one to tell you can't do what you want to do. I'm not going to gatekeep what kinds of activism you need to do. Okay. I'm not going to be that person. However, like we mentioned, you know, there is a skill to kind of doing this kinds of stuff. And we're all, I mean, if you know, there's a lot of administrative work that happens behind the scenes with recovering from religion. I know that there is. and I am not the best person to do
yes.
that. Okay. I have done some behind the scenes stuff with the ACA. I am not the best person for it. There are amazing people who could do that way better than me. So I stick to my lane when it comes to hosting, you know what I mean? But with that being said, I always emphasize every week, if you watch the show, we want to thank the crew that works behind the scenes. And that's not just flapping our lips. That's because they are just as important and integral to any process that happens with the shows as I am or any other host. So there is this idea sometimes in activism where it's like, oh, you have to like be in front of a microphone to make a difference. You have to like do show stuff, or you have to do, start a blog, or you have to, have an individual voice projecting out into the world. And that's actually not true at all. I would say more than half of the work that actually gets done in forms of activism in this community is stuff that's boring. Sometimes it's just meetings. Sometimes it's just, signing documents and coming up with laws that you want to pass on to Congress people. It's like, it's a lot of stuff that you're not going to see on the nightly news, or you're not going to see on YouTube, because it's just not entertaining, but it's important. And in fact, probably more important than what I do, if I'm honest. So that was kind of number 2 point, which is don't think that there's a hierarchy. No hierarchies in activism. Don't think of it as, well, you have to do X, Y, and Z to be important, because I don't believe that's true at all. I think there's multiple ways in which you can be effective. So don't think just because you can't do one thing that there aren't other avenues. So there it is. That's point number 2.
I love that, Dan, that you brought that up. And I know we harp on a lot, like you can come volunteer and, do whatever your talent is. And oh my goodness, yes, please, we need your help, because, as a person who's behind the camera sometimes, like I wish y'all knew like how many things I struggle with that are extremely integral to having a show. Like I'm tone deaf. I can't tell if I sound right on my audio. I need someone to say, Kara, what's happening with your mic? You need to do something to your audio.
Right.
Things like that are super important, and those are skills that are valuable. So I think we kind of forget about that sometimes, and that is not it. We need every skill set that there is. Like you can make a difference.
And also too, like I found this through volunteering through here in the ECA, that like constructive feedback is your friend. It is your friend, because you want someone that's going to be like, you can improve on this, you can improve on that, even if you're in front of the camera or behind it, doing like day-to-day BS that we all do. There's stuff that like, yes, you see me and Car here every week, but there are BS things that we do behind the scenes that you're not aware of. When I volunteer for the ACA, there's BS things behind the scenes that I'm doing. So and when you do those sort of things, people don't think about those things. They just see the person in front of the camera and like, oh, this is what they do every week. But and it's nice when you have someone on your team that's saying, you need to work on this. This is something you're doing really well. And then there's always skills you can improve on. Because that kind of keeps you humble.
Yes.
Because we have seen people in our community that got a little bit too much of an ego and things kind of went sour. So I think that, I'm not talking about anything with the AC or the RfR, just in the atheist activism community in general, that we have to be aware of. You need someone that's going to keep you in check and things that you're always improving on, because that kind of makes you become a better person. And also, like, you're not above your crew. You're not above the people that are supporting you when you're in front of the camera. And that's the most important thing to kind of realize, that we're all kind of in this together. So we all have to take care of each other.
Yes. And I'm using the examples through the specific kinds of activism I'm a part of, which is like media stuff. But again, like it's not all activism is media. Like I think some people maybe get that impression because what they consume obviously is media, right? You're not consuming, I don't know, board meetings, right? In your free time, you're maybe you're watching shows, or maybe you're reading books that you like. So it's like again, I'm not, and I don't want to be a hypocrite here. You know, I understand like hosting and talking and doing this stuff. It's fun. It's fun as heck. It's great. I love it.
It is a lot of fun.
I don't want to trade it for anything. But you know what? I also do boring stuff too. and I think that's really important. When we first were considering another host for Truth Wanted, you know, we have John the Skeptic now, who's one of our hosts. And one of the reasons why I wanted him to be a host is because after his first time doing stuff with us, he said, how can I volunteer and help do more? And we said, well, you know, right now, I mean, we're looking for backup hosts, you know, and our backup hosts are just folks that can literally wait behind the scenes in case one of us loses power or something like that. And he said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And he showed up and he did it. And that meant more to me than the most people who come in and say, oh yeah, I want to come in because I want to like be on camera, you know. And there was a little bit of that with our auditions, right? And that's not to say not everybody that auditioned was so we had great ones and we had ones that needed work, but you know, it's like there was a sense sometimes. I did intakes for everybody that came in, right? So I interviewed people. I wanted to know what they were interested in, and some of them couldn't tell us anything about our shows. They couldn't tell us anything about what they liked, what they didn't like. They just say, ooh, here's an opportunity to, you know, get in the spotlight, you know. And it's like, that's not what this is about. It's like, you got to be doing this for the long term, right? And there's a lot to it. It's not just lights, camera, action. I don't know. Anyway, that's point 2. I spoke a long time on that. But point 3 is talking in a similar vein too. So again, first one is we're talking about well, second one is no hierarchies, right? I don't believe in hierarchies in activism. If you believe that one person's more important than the other, and in this thing, you're wrong. But you know, in 3, we're kind of tying into that because when we want to produce content, we have to understand that there are different audiences involved with what we do in activism. I see a lot of people who want to try activism in the form of talking to other people, for example. And I think that some people are great and they blow it out of the park, and some people have no idea what they're doing with it. Now, that doesn't mean that they're wrong in some of the things that they say or some of the things that they're interested in. But we are always going to be fighting an uphill battle when it comes to talking about secular issues, because we are a minority and because we have to kind of fight to get in people's faces about this stuff. So what do I mean? What am I talking about here? I have a thing I say like almost weekly. I feel like it's something I say all the time on the show, which is you can be right and you can be convincing, but that doesn't mean that you're always right and you're always convincing, right? So like you can be absolutely correct in 100% all of your arguments, and I can still find you to be the biggest asshole on earth, and I'm not just not going to give a fuck about what you say, right? And I'm on your side. I can agree with you on a lot of this, right? So we have to consider our audience when we do activism, and this is more geared again towards folks that want to enter the public space in conversation, because again, I'm not gatekeeping. I'm not going to tell you how you should be doing what you want to do. But if you're not considering your audience in mind when talking to people or getting involved, then you really have to wonder, how effective are you in your style, right? Like a lot of us like to say, oh, we're really into science. We like the metrics. Okay, can you tell me what methodologies you're using? What standards are you following? How are you making sure that what you're doing is better than other methods? You'd be surprised how a lot of people just like never really think about this kind of thing. There's a reason why marketing exists as like a school of knowledge. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things you can learn from human psychology and how people interact with each other and interpret each other's experiences and rhetoric. And so it's really important that you consider your audience when talking about activism, because if you're going to go out there and you're going to be really mean, or you're just going to go out there and say whatever you want, and then you get that pushback from people, that's going to burn you out. You're going to be like, oh no, I can't do this. There's other people that do this better than me, or I don't even know why I'm trying, because all these people are stupid, right? That, you know, I'm just smarter than them. If you go in with that mindset, yeah, you're going to be burned out, because you just think that you're better than other people, and that oh, well, they didn't listen to what you said, so, you know, whatever, right? But there's always a way you can make what you say accessible to people, and have it in a way that's going to be, you know, compatible to their worldview. And the last thing I'll end on is this: if you ever look at political advertising, you know, Republican advertising is not geared towards people on the far left, and neither is advertising for Democratic candidates. It's always for undecided people, right? It's always for people in the middle, because that's when they know that they're going to win the most minds. So I say this to say, I see some people who like literally go on Twitter, and whatever an apologist says on their Twitter account, they will respond to like every single day. And by the way, a lot of those accounts, it's not even them posting. It's like, you know, their secretary, or it's just some blog post that they have 2 weeks out in advance. So you're not even you're just responding to the void at that point. To me, that's not going to be as effective as, you know, having real conversations with real people who are interested about this stuff. So, you know, it's not always just about apologetics, right? It's about, you know, meeting people where they're at, finding that audience. Otherwise, again, if you're going to talk into the void, that's just going to wear you out. So anyway, that's kind of my 3-point talk here. And I've been talking for a long time, and I don't know what the times are here or what I'm doing. So anyway, that's what I got.
I have I think Cara and I have a couple of points that we would like to expand on, and then we can move into Q&A.
Yeah.
So I think
we've got plenty of time. We can talk for a little bit.
Okay,
so
cool,
we're
cool.
good. We're not pressed.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate what you're saying about like, where do you put your energy? Because like I don't go on Twitter. Like I have a Twitter account. Do I go on Twitter? Nope. If there's like an RfR thing I want to promote, or an ACA thing I want to promote, sure, I'll go on Twitter, but I don't talk to the void, because that's not where my focus is. I want to focus on the person that is in front of me, or I'm talking to online. That's where my energy wants to go. If you choose to talk to the void, wonderful for you. I don't think you're going to make much of a difference.
Yeah.
But if that's what you choose to do, awesome for you. And you have to kind of pick where your energy is going to go. Whether if you're in front of the camera or behind, what are you good at? You know, like, where can you put that? That's why, like, when we talk about volunteering with us, we say, like, you don't have to be a helpline agent. You don't have to talk to people. If you don't want to talk to people, you don't have to, but we'll find a home for you. And I found that with the ACA, like, I started doing behind the camera stuff, and then I eventually made it on the nonprofits, you know, and, you know, I've been on, on Truth Wanted with MD Aware and stuff like that. And that was just because I was like, hey, I would like to be on a show.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
Yeah.
You know, but I also do the grunt work. I do behind this. I write show notes. I mod, you know, I will, you know, like you need me to do something, I'll be like, yeah, I'll do it. It's fine. But you also have to know when to say no. And I think that it's hard when you get the bug to be an activist, is to learn to say no. Because you don't want to let other people down, because there's a lot of emotional investment in it, and it can feel really good to help someone, but you also have to take a step back and go, I don't need to do this all the time. Because my husband will remind me, he's like, you promised me Saturdays are for me. And I was like, yes, all day Saturdays are for you. I will not go online on Saturdays.
Yeah.
You know, because you need some balance in your life. Otherwise you are going to get fatigued and frustrated. And
absolutely.
It's not healthy. It's not.
No, and I really like how both of y'all kind of talked about this as almost, in some cases, like a cost-benefit analysis in terms of how much energy am I putting out, and does that match the amount of impact that I'm going to have? Because that was something I really had to learn. When you're going online, I mean, the amount of trolls and people who are just gonna say things that trigger you on purpose just to upset you, people whose minds you are never gonna change, people who may or may not even be sincere, may or may not even be a real human, are endless. They're infinite. You're never gonna whack all those moles, but you will wear yourself out trying, and that is probably not the most efficient use of your time. And
Yeah.
that was something I didn't realize at first. And I gotta tell you, I have enjoyed very much not being on the social medias all that much. I think it was David Teachout came on one week telling us, get off of the social medias if you can. And then of course, we're all on there promoting things and, having links and stuff like that. But, to the extent that you can avoid wearing yourself out, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah,
or if you're going to be on the social medias, don't argue with people. Just don't.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my recommendation. I mean, Kara, you mentioned it, right? To me, it is a cost benefit analysis. If you're familiar with like Peter Singer and others who've talked about like effective altruism, right? It is this idea of like, look, if you want to be the most effective you can rationalize this, right? You can figure out, okay, let's say you're an Uber driver and you're like, okay, I'm going to drive my car 24/7 because I want to get the most amount of passengers I can. What's wrong with that? Well, eventually your car is going to need maintenance. And if you keep driving the car, it's going to break down, right? So there are ways you can take care of your car and take care of yourself as a driver and still make a living. Maybe not now. I think Uber wages are probably too small, but you see the metaphor I'm getting here, right? It's like there are ways you can keep the activism train going without blowing out on stuff that's not going to matter in the long term. Like the truth is, if we're honest with ourselves, the arguments you get into on Twitter and Facebook are just a drop in an ocean of madness. It's really not the best way of doing this whole activism thing. So
yeah. Well, what other tips do you have for people who maybe are involved in activism or want to get involved in activism or are really passionate about a topic, or maybe they're in their angry atheist phase and they want to do something and they want to make a difference and they want to help out? Like, what are some things that people can do? I mean, other than what you've already told us, obviously, to kind of combat burnout or compassion fatigue? What do we do if we find out, okay, I'm in this spot, I think I've burned myself out, now what?
Yeah, so again, this is something I had to figure out for myself too, right? It's like, what's my role? What am I doing? For me, part of that was largely taking off the work that I had to do for Truth Wanted and actually being able to delegate some of that for other people has been immensely great for me because I couldn't keep doing it the way that I was. Now it's so self-automated, it's really crazy how much work is done by other people that aren't me. And so taking that to the person at home that doesn't run a call-in show, I would say, look, if you have an expertise that you can contribute, there's probably ways you can do that in ways where you don't have to completely burn yourself out. If you're an expert on neuroscience and you want to talk about claims in neuroscience, maybe you have the capacity to build your own website and your own blog and promote that on other people's places. Maybe you don't, but maybe you know other people that can help you do that can help you kind of get that message out there and utilize the skills that you have best and contribute it to a larger movement. Because ultimately, again, using the car analogy, if you go so hard that the car breaks down, it's suddenly the whole car is not even useful, right? You're not going to be useful if you can't feel like that you can contribute in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I imagine that can look a lot of different ways for different people. The kinds of things that one person is going to be able to put energy into and still not be drained is going to be very different than the kinds of things that someone else is going to be able to put their energy into. If you're more introverted or extroverted, or
yes,
depending on what your skills are, what else is going on in your life.
Yes. And I used to think too that, I had to be able to commit to this full time as a gig. I don't. I really don't. I think I can contribute a lot and still have a day job somewhere else, and be able to do that. And lots of people are able to make that work too. For some people, that's a calling, and they're able to handle that. Personally, I always wondered if I ever went full time with the ACA, for example, if I would burn myself out. I feel like I kind of would. I feel like that balance would be harmful for me, but it may not be harmful for other people, right? It's just about knowing your limits, knowing your capacity.
Yeah, as Helen always says. Well, wait, what is it that you always say, Helen?
Knowing your limitations is a strength.
That's it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And I preach that. And that was something I had to learn as a, somewhere in my 30s. I had to learn it, and it's served me good as I've gotten older. Because I think also too, when you're younger, you want to change the world. There's this very deep passion inside you. Like, I am going to charge ahead, and I'm going to conquer the world, and I'm going to make it a better place, which I think is very admirable. But you're also a human being. You need to form interpersonal relationships. You need to have friends and family and people that could give two shits what you're doing as far as activism. Like, they'll be supportive to you, but they're like, can we have a couple of drinks and watch a Marvel movie and not talk about activism? That'd be great. And I think you need that balance in your life of someone to kind of pull you back, remind yourself that you're a human being and you don't have to take on the mantle. And knowing your limitations is a strength. Is like, you'll get these grandiose ideas in your head, and then you have to kind of take a step back and going, what is realistic?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of which, we've talked about all of the kind of caveats and how to make sure you're not taking on too much, but obviously, the three of us are volunteering. We do a lot of activism. A lot of the people who are in here watching the program are probably involved in volunteering and doing a lot of good work in the world. What would you say are some of the reasons that you keep coming back, that you want to make sure that you don't get burned out so that you can keep doing your activism? What are the benefits of it to you? And what are some of your favorite accomplishments that you've been able to do?
Okay,
well, that's a good question.
Honestly, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs for me, baby. It's my self-actualization for me.
That's a king for you.
You reached the top.
Maslow's a king.
It's the top. Like I just feel like for myself, when I'm on the air or when I am at a conference or whatever, I really am doing what I can do best. I feel like it's the thing that I'm good at, and it's the thing I want to continue to do, because I know for a fact, based on what people have told me, that I've helped people, and that's a really good thing to have. I'm very lucky and very privileged to be in a position where I can contribute to a greater activist scene in such a way. I fully recognize that not everybody has has the ability to host call-in shows and stuff. I mean, it's really wild when I think about it, but that is something that gives me a lot of joy, and knowing that I got to contribute even in a small way by having this idea of what Truth Wanted could be, and now having being at a full-fledged show that has at least half a dozen volunteers that work on it every week is really an incredible thing. So I'm glad I've gotten to make my mark, and I'm still looking to continue to make my mark in other ways. I'm always thinking about what else I can do, and what else is out there. So
yeah, I really like that. And so we have a whole lot of questions.
We do have a lot of questions.
I see a lot of questions. Honestly, it's a lot. I'm glad you guys are keeping track, because I'm not. Yeah. So
see, this is
you're
what
not
we do
supposed
here.
to. You're just supposed to sit here and look pretty and talk.
Right.
We're behind the scenes, taking the notes and copy and pasting the questions, as are our other mods and volunteers. And yeah, so you can talk. And so would you like to go ahead and move into questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, because we've
Let's
got
do
a
it.
lot.
I think I've spoken extemporaneously for far too long. So let's go into a more Q&A format, shall we?
Yeah, let's
absolutely.
do it. All right, Helen, you want to kick us off?
Yes. So, do you have personal support, partners, friends, family during your lead up to burnout? How I don't know how to. This is sentences. So did you have personal support during your lead up to burnout versus having your partner, your friends, or your family, and how to help them with your ideas? So those ideas that you presented to them, how did they help you kind of cope with that experience?
So going back to when I first experienced it hardcore, when I was really getting Truth Wanted off the ground as a ACA property. I wasn't really dating at the time. This was something I was doing alone. Of course, I mentioned Vern and other folks that helped, who did believe in me and who did think I had good ideas, and so I did get support and resources in that capacity. But that was also a problem, I think, in that, again, I wasn't having that balance with other people in my other relationships in life. This was something that I worked on over the weekends for, and did for a long time, because there's a lot that goes into a show. There's show notes, there's editing, there's booking guests, and a lot of that stuff, again, just wasn't delegated at the time because it was just a brand new thing. And so there was a lot to learn in me figuring out those boundaries, but also, as you mentioned, like figuring out how to get support. Right now, I live in a house with my wonderful partner, and she's amazing and always supports me and always watches everything I do. But she didn't want to be in here today because she didn't want to join a Zoom call, and I totally understand that. But she will watch the recording later. So I'm saying that because I see her right now, and she's outside, and I'm teasing her.
Well,
but
we give her love for supporting you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But it's great that I have that support now. I do think it has made it so that times when I am feeling stressed aren't as stressful. So having people in your life that support what you do, yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's not to be taken for granted. I mean, that's important.
Yeah.
Oh, glad you have support. Okay, so we have another question. Any advice for dealing with bleak situations where you just have to accept that things are not going to improve and things really are out of your hands? Like, for example, working with someone who's in the process of dying, or trying to solve problems that are too big or outside of the scope of existing systems. And how do we deal with burnout surrounding that kind of thing?
Okay. All right. So let's see how quickly I can talk about this. There's a great book by a philosopher I respect called David Benatar. And David Benatar has several books. I'm trying to remember the name of this one. I can't remember the name of it, but he has a book where he talks kind of about existential problems of today, right? And this idea of like what we can control. So he kind of divides up human existence into 3 categories. He says, okay, so there's humans in the broad universe, right? I'm talking about cosmic scale, like literally end-to-end universe. Humans don't matter in that sense, right? Like broadly speaking, we don't. Earth could be gone tomorrow and the universe would move on, right?
Is it the human predicament?
It's a human predicament, yes.
Okay, I'll link it in the chat.
Yeah, so he talks about that. So basically the conclusion is there is no human has ever been able to do anything about this. So it's not really something that we can really worth worrying about, right? I mean, like, how can we change it? There's just no way. And for most of us, it actually really doesn't matter for our day-to-day to think about us in that kind of scale. So then he talks about the second category, and it's the world scale. And for some people, this is an ambition that some people have. We want to be, as I mentioned before, great men of history. Is great men is the term. It's kind of sexist, I guess, to think about it that way, but like that's the term historians use, right? When they talk about a narrative of history that describes individuals that have caused actions that have changed culture, that have changed society, that have changed institutions, right? That have just made these big changes. And so he says, out of the billions of people that have ever lived on Earth, there's a small handful that get to be up in that category, right? And so some of us may be so lucky as to be able to be remembered thousands of years from now. But the truth is, 1,000 years from now, I'll probably be forgotten. I will probably not have anybody in that will have a story about me. I'll probably be just known as a file on an index somewhere on an internet archive, right? So that's something that we have to wrestle with, this idea of what we can do on the world scale, because for some of us that can be kind of hard, especially if you have this idea that you want to change the world, right? Like I do and everybody else does. But then there's this third category, and this third category is talking about meaning from humans to humans. And he says that this is the most important that we can really have to really contemplate, because this is the only realm where most of us will ever get to ever do anything for. And it's this idea. It's, look, your community, the people that you talk to every day, those are the people that you have meaning to and meaning for. And those are pretty much the only situations in which you have change, right? Unless you're going to become president of the United States tomorrow, that's pretty much going to be the situation for your whole life. Now, some of us do great things for our community. Some of us, are able to have statues named after us in some town somewhere because their local organization built a park or something, right? And like, that may not mean anything to me here in Austin, Texas, but that meant something to people there. And that's like the most that we can ever really hope to make a difference for. I mean, for most of us, right? Again, I'm very, very lucky because I have a name that's like out there on the internet, but like that's such a small portion of the universe and the world and human civilization that in the end, that's not really what I should even be thinking about. I really should turn my meditation and focus towards the community that I can control. And that philosophy, that idea has really given me pause and has really given me sort of a direction in which to move my efforts towards, to not like look into the void and say, oh, this is pointless, because it's not pointless to the people around you. It really does do something for the folks that mean the most. So anyway, I said I would try to be quick with it. It's a great book, but you should go look at it. So
no, I love that. And we are all about book recommendations here, so I'm excited that we got a good one. I just added that to my Goodreads reading list. That's excellent. Thank you.
It's another book that I will go. That's a book I won't read.
Right?
I'll read it if there's an audio version.
I watch videos. I don't read books.
Yeah. Audiobooks are my jam lately.
Yeah,
I drive a lot,
I do have some audiobooks on my Audible. That is super helpful. But I am I going to sit down and read a fucking book? No, I'm not.
Cliff's Notes. Yeah,
so
that's like a dated reference.
Know your limits, right? You gotta be
knowing your limits is a strength.
Yes.
So
right,
I was kind of laughing because about what you're saying about statues, but statues that are made in glory are what birds shit upon.
I like that. It's pretty good.
So I'm just saying. So, like, just a little bit of humbleness for all those people that you really admire. They're so birds that are going to show on your fucking statue.
That's true. Maybe you might make a more meaningful impact with a human.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. What else do we have, Helen? I think we have more questions.
We have more questions. I will ask another question if I can pull up the Google Doc.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay. So one of our friends was asking, if you sign a lot of petitions on different policies and then start getting a lot of text and email alerts about a lot of different things that are being passed or banned in legislature, how can you not be burned out from all the news and texts and email alerts? You need to get off the internet.
Yeah. Like that, that's something that's interesting about the kind of activism that most of us are interested in, because it's actually changed quite a bit in the past few decades. I'm going to summarize this as part of like atheist activism, right? But like really it's a coalition of many different interests. For example, LGBT issues are very much talked about now in atheist circles, when if we're being completely honest, we're not being talked about a decade or two ago, right? Issues in other categories have also been kind of added to this coalition of the kind of activism circles that we front, right? So if anything, it's a good thing because we become more informed about the world and more informed about how we should act in it. But it can also give us that paralysis, like, oh, there's so much going on. What else can we do? And that's why, again, citing that book again, you really just have to focus on your community, what you can do the most for. I'm going to be, like I said, I'm going to be on an archive page somewhere 1,000 years from now. I'm not working towards 1,000 years from now. I'm working towards what I can do right now to help the people around me, because that is the most effective that I can be. So you can sign a bunch of petitions and maybe that helps you sleep at night, but what are you going to be doing with your day to day? You know what I mean? Like that's what I think is going to be the most important. And you can't solve all the world's problems, but you can help with some of them. So, choose your battles.
I like that a lot. I know you've kind of hit on that a few times, but for some reason that just resonated with me. Just how you said it just then, that, maybe you're not going to solve all the world's problems, but you can help with something. Like, how is that not meaningful?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think also too, like, you have to kind of focus locally than globally.
Yeah.
Like, or just on one person. Like, if you can get one person to shift how they feel about queer people, that's great. Get someone to shift about how they feel about people of color. Get people to shift how religion might be a net harm. Like, getting people just to think about things a little bit differently. And I always say that, like, and I think that this happens a lot in the atheist activist community. They think they're going to change someone's mind with one conversation.
Yeah.
That never happens. I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you all motherfuckers right now, that is not going to happen. But what happens is that you might never see that seed sprout. But you might be one of the person that helped water the seed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of see it that way.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry, but this goes back to this idea of markets, right? I think there's a lot of people that they're like, oh, I'm going to make this atheist show. And they just make it and they don't even think about who's listening to it. And the truth is, for the vast majority of my audience, they probably agree with most of what I say. And that's going to be the case for pretty much anything you make. But that means that I can only go so far. The best person to convince your parents is going to be you, right? Like I don't have that kind of prior relationship with your friends and family that you do. So like, you're going to be the one that's going to make a bigger difference in that realm than I ever will. I may hit a couple strays on the internet of people looking up stuff, and that's always going to be the goal, right? But the truth is, the most meaningful impact you can have are the people that know you the best and that you have that prior relationships with. So that's where I think the heart of activism should be for most of us.
Yeah, and that really goes back to what you were saying earlier too, about, talking about things in an effective way where you're not turning people off to these ideas. You're thinking about your audience and whether what you're saying is, are you insisting that, you have to admit that I'm right, or are we, having an actual dialogue?
It's a lose-lose, because you're getting frustrated. You're not doing it in a healthy way, and they're not listening. They think you suck. That's not good. That's not good for the movement. We don't want people to think we suck. You know what I mean?
Right. We're pretty cool. We're at least 20% cooler. We have Helen.
At least.
So,
I know. That's what I do. I dispense cool.
Yes.
That is my goal in life, is to dispense all the coolness. And all of you are now 20% cooler because you are in this chat.
That's true. That's true.
I deem it so.
Yes, and that therefore it is true. And we have kind of a related follow-up question.
On how being cool?
No. Well, maybe it could be related to that, but I meant following up on what we were discussing about being effective and having an impact on the people that you have a relationship with. And this person is asking a question that I think comes up from time to time, and this is a good time to bring it up. They're wondering, is there anything that I can do to shorten the so-called angry atheist phase? And they go on to explain, I'm here in Texas, and it seems when I'm about to realize the light ahead, something like another shooting happens, and it seems to trigger my anger at Christians and this gun cult. And I know, most of these people may be brainwashed and are otherwise nice people. So I wonder if anyone knows of any therapeutic ideas to reset my mind, as other people are talking about sending thoughts and prayers. What do we do with this when it's just so upsetting?
Here's my first reaction to that, which is give yourself permission to go on a journey. Because what I hear there is, I want to be done with these emotions that I'm feeling. I want to be able to react stoically to the things around me and not let the things that frustrate me. But the truth is, even the best of us get frustrated. It just matters what you do with that frustration. I think that's the difference, right? Like, I'm not looking on r/atheism every day, like I used to or whatever, because I don't need to. I'm doing things that I'm still getting my information, I'm still being informed, and I can still sort of point those emotions in a way that fuels rather than harms what I do, right? Because if we're honest with ourselves, we probably got to this place because we were emotionally affected either personally or very closely to the issues that we talk about all the time, right? If it hasn't happened to us, it's happened to close people that we care about. So it is emotional, it is personal. Don't let that be a hindrance by saying, oh, well, I can't think about it because it's hitting too close to home. That's okay, but give yourself permission to go on that journey. Don't be like, well, I have to stop here and just leave this all behind, because that's part of you now, whether you like it or not. So embrace it and figure out what you can do with that to make it your own, and see where that takes you, I guess. Yeah.
I also want to kind of piggyback on that. Atheism is just a position that we don't hold to a God belief. You think there are people in the gun cult that are not atheist? Probably are. So we have to kind of look at people as complex human beings, that there are going to be people that will agree with you on some things. They're going to hold positions that you don't agree with. And that's something that is very hard to deal with, because when I went through my deconversion, I wanted to believe that people just came to a certain point of skepticism and they became better people. That doesn't happen. Yes. All you can do is, like, as Dan was saying, your feelings are your feelings, and it's always what you do with your feelings. If you're feeling frustrated, angry, you need to channel that into something that is actually going to help alleviate those feelings to a certain degree. That is not destructive. That is actually a positive place for you to get some mental health. That is the reality of it. And also realizing that people are very complex, and just because they hold the position that you happen to agree with, they might hold positions that are also very, very terrible.
Yep.
So you have to kind of get there too.
Something I got to recently, which sounded like you guys were talking about earlier, is doing that social media diet. Listen, I know people say, oh, you got to do this thing. It will help you. It will help you. If something makes you angry and you're upset by something, write it down. Keep a list of the stuff that keeps you frustrated, so that when you are really burnt out by all this stuff and you're wondering why you're doing this and you don't want to continue, you have a list of stuff that reminds you, oh yeah, this is why, because this is wrong and something has to be done about it. That can be turned into a positive if you can construct it in a way that's positive. But if you let it get to you, it will get to you. So it's something we all have to work on. Yeah.
You have to find a balance, but like being informed is very important. And I'm not saying people shouldn't be informed, but like I've cut back on consuming news to maybe a couple hours a week. So I just can keep up with what's going on. And somebody will tell me, like somebody was going to tell you what's going on. You don't even need to go on Twitter. Somebody will tell you.
Yeah.
But you have to not doom scroll. And I think during the pandemic, we were all doom scrolling, and that's a very hard habit to break. And I think now we have to stop doom scrolling and thinking everything is bad. I downloaded an app on my phone that gives a lot of positive news of really good things that are happening in the world, which is super helpful when I'm feeling super sad about the world. I go on my positive news app and find out wonderful things that people are doing around the world to make the world better. So I think that will also help a lot.
Yeah. What I was also going to add too is, what was my point? I was going to say, what was I going to say? Never mind. I guess it wasn't important.
It'll come back to
I'll get back to it.
No, it'll come back to you. It's like a sneeze that almost happens. It comes back around.
Yeah.
But
I remember what I was going to say.
See?
As soon as Kara's talking, of course I remember what I was going to say. But it's one more news article about church abuse, for example, isn't going to make you a better activist, right? It isn't going to suddenly now you have the motivation to do it. Like if you're already feeling that way, you're going to keep feeling that way. I can never hear anything bad about the Christian church ever again for the rest of my life. And that still doesn't justify the wrong that's already happened. That needs to be made right. Right. So that's also a perspective you can adopt. Anyway, that's all I had on that.
No, I love that point because, you know, like we were talking about, yes, you want to be informed, but are you getting information from the media that you're consuming, or are you consuming something that is just designed to get an emotional reaction out of you and is not actually imparting useful, meaningful information? And I think a lot of the times it's not. It's like you said, it's giving you a repetition of information that you already know about, or it's presenting information in a way that is designed to cause you to become angry and upset and like and share and send it on and comment because it's trying to get engagement out of you. And that happens by causing an emotional reaction. And that's great for whoever's making money off of that media platform, but maybe that's not great for the people who are getting all stirred up and angry and anxious and upset. And
I also want to remind people, if you do that, be forgiving of yourself, because we're all, like, I do it too. Like, I try to be more discernment about like things that I'm going to be reactionary about, but I'm an emotional, irrational meat bag. That's just my favorite thing to say about humans. We're emotional, irrational meat bags, and we will see something that will cause a reaction and we'll comment, like, share, do angry emojis, whatever the fuck it is, because that is what we do. And it's okay for that, but also, are you doing the thing to channel your energy into something that will make those emotions actually do something, even if it's just with one person, like you're trying to make a positive change, or you're just reacting to everything on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that trying to find that balance is very healthy for people.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, I think we have one more question. I can't remember who's up. Helen, are you up?
I'm up.
Okay.
So, Dan, to roll out the last question, what do you think about Christian nationalism? I know you got opinions.
Oh, I think it's so wonderful. It's so great.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. No, obviously it's fucking terrible. I mean, I feel like this is shooting fish in a barrel, right? Like, look, obviously it's on the rise, right? But I think like it's complicated because like I felt like I've talked about this before, and I want to make sure people understand what I mean. Christian nationalism, at least so far in the polls, right, when we're just talking about voting for candidates, hasn't been as meaningful. What it has been meaningful for is the rhetoric that has influenced acts of violence and acts of bigotry towards people. Okay, so what do I mean when I'm making this distinction? It is terrible, and we have a right to be mad about it, and we should continue to fight against it. But so far, at least, it hasn't been like Christian nationalists, the types who are getting into this ideology, were already going to vote the way that they were going to vote. So from like that perspective, there may be other things to look at, but like it is on the rise and it is influencing policy, which is something to think about, right? So obviously there's trans bills all over the place. I mean, I can't even keep track of which ones now. Of course, we've had the abortion ban last year, which in writing technically doesn't have anything to do with Christianity, because if you look at the opinions written by the Supreme Court, they don't like cite the Bible. But like, let's be real, it happened because Christians have been advocating for abortion bans for decades, right? And it's come to that point that other countries are not like rethinking their abortion policies, right? Like Canada's not like, maybe we should actually take that one back. Like that's not as far as I'm aware, that's not happening, right? It is a uniquely American phenomenon in that regard. So it is affecting things. It is changing things. I'm grateful for the fact that it's not going to be like the poll pushing thing that I think some people are afraid of, but it is an issue in the sense that it is actively harming people, and it is that kind of rhetoric is never good for a society. You think in the information age where you can just kind of fact check everything, that we would be we'd be better in these conversations. But the truth is, we have developed these kinds of bubbles, and we have developed these kinds of media ecosystems that inform this. I'm a subscriber to, if you guys are familiar with Gab, the right wing media site. It's like right wing social media. I get their monthly emails because I love the shit they say on there. It is the most unhinged stuff. But they directly push Christian nationalism. They're like, oh yeah, Christian nationalism is super great. If you're a Republican and you haven't thought about this, you should think about Christian nationalism, because like it is getting attention, it is getting traction. So yeah, it sucks. And it's just another reason why we should be talking about this stuff. There's some liberals who are like, oh, the atheism stuff, religion stuff, whatever. Are we done with all that? No, we're not. It's still a big deal. So yeah, we got to talk about it.
Yeah. Hence the need for activism, sustainably and effectively. Yeah.
And also, if you're going to subscribe to those right-wing posts, read it when you're not going to blow your lid.
Yeah. I'm a special kind of masochist. All right. People have told me this, that I do this to myself, and I do, but
I do it to myself too, Dan. So, I will go on occasionally on Breitbart and other right-wing news sources, and I read for a little while, and then I start yelling at my phone.
Right.
Yeah. I go on Focus on the Family sometimes just to relive childhood trauma.
Jesus.
Just for fun.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I am. Like all the good feelings.
That's a different kind of trauma that I'm choosing to abstain from. Jeez. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, it's bad. We could do a whole show on that.
Listen, we all have masochistic tendencies. It's not the fun kink, but it's a kink.
You know what? Don't shame my kink. I enjoy it very much.
Kink
it's not a fun kink, but it's a
on
kink.
The show.
Oh man. Yeah, you're right. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen, Helen.
Amen to that. And on that note, we are out of questions. Dan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us. I loved your bullet points and all of your recommendations for readings. I mainly mean the book, not the social media site.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to, you can. I'm just saying, maybe you want to have a drink, smoke a bowl, maybe have a moment before you go on those sites.
Yeah.
Just gonna say.
Yeah, but no, that was a lot of great information. I can't wait to go back and rewatch, because I love going back and watching these again, so I can really dig in and pay attention when I'm not on the camera. Now, I try to fast forward through the parts where I'm talking, because I get super embarrassed about that, but I'm gonna re-listen to the parts where you're talking.
Listen, I don't set yourself up for disappointment, Kara, because I don't know, rewatching myself like that, ugh. That's hard for me to do, let alone you looking at me. So I don't know.
No, I was telling Helen before the show I'm like, I can't go back. And we were talking about, if you watch yourself, you notice little ticks and things that you do on camera.
It is the worst thing in the world.
It's so bad. It's so embarrassing.
I mean,
apparently I say, as like at least 3 or 4 times in every sentence, it would seem.
You also say I'm
working
on that a lot. But
that's because I'm very interested in a lot of things.
I just noticed that because I listened back to our shit, Kara, and we've been doing this a long time, that I just pick up on stuff.
Well,
like, I tend to say and stuff like this, and and like. So, like I got my own shit too. You just notice these things.
I have a communications degree. I literally went to college for like public speaking and rhetoric. And like, I look at myself and I'm like, God damn it. What the fuck was all that about? Why did I spend 4 years doing this if I don't? Anyway, that's
I know the feeling. I get in a knockdown, drag out argument with my family. And I'm like, why?
When a producer at the ACA like criticizes you on something that you said, and you're just like, oh, well, I guess I can't do that again.
Yeah, we do these kinds of sort of after show briefings, and nobody is spared, which is a good thing. But
I'm trying to keep my mic near my diaphragm. I really am working
6
on
to 12 inches.
Like now I need to keep it. I'm gonna tell next time when I do the nonprofits on Wednesday, I'll be like, listen, I'm like, it's near my diaphragm. Okay.
Right.
Dan told me.
That's right.
We're doing it right. That's great. Well, anyway, I am going to go back and rewatch just Dan's parts. I'm going to fast forward mine so I don't have to,
we're just
see
gonna skip over
myself
that
say,
stuff.
And that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, moving on. That was interesting, Dan. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I am so glad you were able to join us. Do you have any links or anything you would like to share with us about where people can find you or your work?
I've been on a Twitter Sabbath, but like, you know, you can still follow me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. That's where I shit post. And oh man, I should get like a newsletter instead. Wouldn't that be awful? Oh, I say that, I'll probably do it.
You could just do a shitpost newsletter to all the people that ascribe to the ACA.
Yeah. If you want to see me talk for even longer, you can watch me on Truth Wanted or on Talk Heathen. Those are both weekly call-in shows. I'm not on Talk Heathen every week, but I'm on Truth Wanted like 75% of the time at least. So yeah, check it out.
If you put in
highly recommend it.
Talk Heathen and Dan's name into the YouTube algorithm, there'll be videos.
Yeah, I was just on this last Sunday.
Yeah.
Great show. So yeah, check it out.
Oh, I am going to check that out. That is queued up on my list and I haven't watched that one yet. So I'm definitely going to. I love it. Well, thank you for coming on here as well. Now people will have another place to see you and hear you talk. And hopefully we'll have you back again sometime. Because this was excellent. I think this was a lot of good information, and I am really glad we had you on. And we will be back here again next week. Same time, same channel, same link. We would love for everyone to join us again. And I believe we're having Dr. Daryl Ray next week giving his talk about incels and the boy crisis. So mark your calendar for that. It's going to be good. I have heard that it is a pretty great presentation.
It is. I got a preview on Let's of the Valley, and it is a very good. I know it's going to more in depth on our program, but it's definitely something to check out for sure.
And you know, when Daryl gives a presentation, there is a greater than 50% chance that there will be some sort of image of a duck penis or something at some point during the show. So
there's definitely going to be a dildo.
Right. It will happen. So check us out for that next week. And if you want to watch some other previous episodes of the show, you can find us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find the audio recordings. And again, if you have ideas for what you would like to see happen on the show, or questions or comments, then you can email us at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And don't forget, you can also check out our blog and our podcast at the links that I'm going to drop in here. And Helen, despite the fact that we just talked about, you know, maybe going on a social media diet, would you like to tell people where they can find us on the social medias if they want to?
Listen, this is your, if you're going to have some cheesecake, go use our cheesecake. So what you're going to do is that you're going to go on our social medias. We have a Facebook main page that you can go to. We have a Facebook support page. We are on Twitter. We were on the Instagram and the TikTok. All you want to do is just find out what's going on with recovering from religion. We don't debate on there. We're not going to, post dank memes or anything like that. You just go on there and find out what's going on with recovering from religion on all your socials. So just do that. Okay, I'm going to read the feedback poll.
Excellent.
It's one of my favorite things to do.
And you are excellent at it, so please.
I am. I at least try to make it entertaining.
All right. And I will go ahead and launch that. I realize now you were waiting for me to do that. Subtlety is sometimes lost on me.
I need visuals.
Yes. Okay.
So, I want all of you mofos to answer this poll because it's very important for us to get feedback on the program and how you find us and how interested on the topics that we talk about. So this program was relevant to me. 1, don't know, don't care. 5, very relevant. This was great. I love this so much. It was awesome. 2 to 4, it's a varying degree. Number 2, the speaker was clear and understandable. 1, banana phone. 5, perfectly understandable. It was like they were standing right next to me. It was amazing. 2 to 4, again, variables. Maybe your phone is like AT&T or it's like T-Mobile. Just depends. So go ahead and answer that. Number 3, I will definitely attend future programs like this. 1, no, F you, hated this, will not be back. You're terrible. 5, oh my goodness, I want to be 30% cooler. Car and Helen are amazing. I will be back. So number 5. And 2 to 4, maybe. Sure. Awesome. Might be here. Okay, we'll accept that as well. And number 4, I cannot do a category. So we're just going to say, how did you find recovering from RfRx tonight? Because you were super interested in being here through the RfR online community and Slack, where all the cool people hang out, through a meetup event, through Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, because you're not on a media diet, through Discord, through the RfR website, or others. So you got cyclically downloaded to be here, and that's how you found us. So put that in there as well. So I'm going to now not talk.
Yes. Well, you say that, but this is normally the moment in the program where we would have our closing RfR moment from our wonderful executive director, Gail Jordan. But I think she may be tied up on another call at this particular moment. So rather than doing that, we will let her continue to handle some of the many instances of business and things that happen that go on behind the scenes, and we will instead have perhaps a couple of words from Helen before we move to, oh, you know what also we could do before that? Do y'all want to know who won in the initial poll when we asked Star Trek versus Star Wars? Yes, I want to know
Star Trek or Star Wars.
Okay, so we will
that was
reveal
the most important question.
Yes, and then we'll wrap up and go to the Hangout. So if you are still answering the exit poll, I'm going to give you like until the end of this sentence to finish answering that, so I can close that down, and then I will launch the results of the first poll. So 3, 2, 1, hit answer now. Okay, I am going to go ahead. Wow, okay, yeah, I think everybody answered it. Awesome. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, so I will end that poll now, and let me pull up the results of the initial poll. And so the first question, we'll go over the results of both of them. The first question was, have you heard of the term compassion fatigue? And wow, I'm actually surprised. 78% of people said yes, they had heard of that term. 17% of people said no, and 4% of people had heard of it, but they're not really super familiar with it. So that was actually a lot higher than I was thinking.
That was higher than what I thought too. I only heard of this like a week ago. So
yeah, wow, people are up to date here. We do a lot of reading here at RfRx.
We have a very smart audience. There are well-read, very intelligent people that hang out in the circle.
So why did you invite me then again?
Because I wanted to make you 30% cooler, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah. It's true. No. Okay, and then the most important question of the evening: Star Wars or Star Trek? And we have a clear winner. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, and the spoilers from the poll were already in Discord over an hour ago. So if you were one of the cool people on Discord, you already know the answer to the poll. And it turns out that Star Trek is the clear winner at 52%. 26% of people, full half as many, selected Star Wars, and 22% of y'all are apparently not fans of either one. So I don't know what's going on there.
They're watching Battlestar Galactica.
That's okay. Yeah. All right. I'll accept that answer. Well, there you have it. Yeah, that is the answer to the question of the evening. Thank you for participating.
Or Stargate.
Yeah. Oh, or Stargate. Yeah,
or Stargate.
Yeah. I guess there are other sci-fi options, and I think there was a little bit of a conversation going on in the chat about the difference between science fiction and science fantasy, which I would not mind revisiting that conversation during the Hangout, which we will move to here in just a second. But Helen, do you have any final words to share with us before we do turn off the mic and go to the Hangout?
Yes. So I'm going to say thank you to Dan, my wonderful friend, for being here. Thank you so much for doing this talk. This was really, really informative. Not just in activism, I don't think this is talked about even with people that want to extend themselves to family or friends or their community, even on like an individual level, about how to take care of ourselves, and that you will get burned out. So I think that not only on an activism front, just how we relate to one another and how we give of ourselves. So I think this was a really important thing to talk about in that context. So thank you so much for that. So moving on, thank you, Dan, by the way, again. And so listen, we have new fundraiser news, which I'm so fucking excited about. So next week we will have links to the fundraiser, but our wonderful friend of recovering from Maryland, Dave Warnock from Dying Out Loud, had talked to Del Rey yesterday, over the weekend, and kind of recruited Jimmy Stone from the line to do a fundraiser for us. We will have links up soon so you can start donating, and the fundraiser is scheduled for June 24th. Now listen, I know y'all like being here, okay? But I all know that you have $5 you've been spending on a latte that you could be giving to recovering from religion. So I'm going to encourage you to be a part of this extravaganza of the fundraiser. And also too, if you decide you're going to do that, I would encourage you to watch the fundraiser that's going to be on June 24th. We will have more information coming on Monday, so please stay tuned in. And also as well, this is going to be so amazing. We're going to have Matt Delatanti, Seth Andrews, Dave Arnra, some wonderful, great people in the atheist community is going to be super supportive to recovery for religion. And we are in the beginning stages, but I'm telling you, this is going to be so badass that if you don't participate, you're going to be like 5% cool, which is not what you want. So I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned, and we will have more information as we go forward. Check out, subscribe to us on all of your social medias because it will be posted on there. Check out the website. Keep updated. You people, do it. Do the thing. Like, subscribe, ring bells. I don't know, whatever the fuck people do. Do it. Okay, follow. Do all the things. Keep track what's going on with the fundraiser and all the wonderful things that we're doing. And you will be 20% cooler. You don't want to be 5%. You want to be 20%. I'm just telling you. Maybe even 30 if you donate.
Yeah. And don't forget to come volunteer with a wonderful organization that will try not to.
That's right. We also like time. Time is money. So we make all the atheist money here. Also, too, please check out Dr. Del Rey's conversation about incels, because this is a very relevant conversation and the state of young men in our country and how we take care of them